It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
And of course, by it, I mean... Gish Gallop, you're literally moving on to another question before you give me a chance to respond. And now you're going to interrupt me again! That was the cosmological argument, G-Man. There's a lot to go over there before I'm interrupted in a few seconds.
So
oh, there it is.
And Axe doesn't have a very beginning of Axe.
That's a lie as well. How is that? How can you constantly lie like this?
Time out.
Jesus fuck, man. Yeah, so as I'm sure you can see, my time spent with G-Man was analogous to time one might spend trying to teach a 5-year-old child the finer points of quantum mechanics, while they're having a tantrum. Fun, right? Wrong! This was supposed to be a debate. No one said anything about babysitting a man twice my age. More on that later. First, let's ask G-Man his opinion on what he was doing. Are you deliberately wasting time, or is this what you do naturally?
No, this ain't what I do naturally.
Okay, so you're deliberately wasting time. There you have it, folks. What more do I need to say? And really, that's the important point here. Nothing need be added to the debate for an intelligent and objective person to recognize that G-Man is an infantile liar, whose only tactic in debate is to suppress his opponent and push his own delusional narrative. Bereft entirely, as he is, of intelligent reasoning or evidence, he adopts the mantra, "If I can't have it, neither can anyone else." And all of his toys end up on the floor. But wait, there's more. Give him half a second and he'll lie to you about you, despite you clearly spelling out your position not moments before. And then when you rightly accuse him of the strawman fallacy, he'll deny that too. Because remember folks, honesty is a rare thing, and simply pointing out that someone's lying when they are isn't useful unless they have some sort of value for honesty, some sort of honor, some sort of integrity. But G-Man, he's the product of a sort of artificial selection, whereby any theist who attempts to argue with any integrity is going to be shown very quickly to be wrong. That's what G-Man's afraid of. And that was my mistake. I came into this in good faith. I treated him with the assumption, as I do with anyone, that he's capable of being civil and honest. But I think I was wrong. I don't think he can debate like that. He'd lose immediately. To those of you saying I should have known better, well, I wasn't expecting much, but he was a lot worse this time than I've ever seen him before. And I have had debates with theists who have been genuinely pleasant, who I've had actual good conversations with. G-Man's just too much of a pussy, to be honest. So, let me repeat what I said towards the end of the debate. I am perfectly happy to explain all this to you, but you are not willing to let me. So let's do a video! So yeah, before I was predictably cut off at the end there, what I was going to say was a video series each responding to each other's points. It seems like a more fair venue. Each one of us gets to choose what we say, gets to make our points honestly, and without being interrupted. So guess what I'm gonna do now? So, G-Man, do atheists exist?
No.
That's interesting. Very interesting. Unfortunately for G-Man, however, it's also very impossible to demonstrate, unless you can present to me a verifiable mind reader. Because guess where the burden of proof is, G-Man? That's right, on you. For the permanent avoidance of doubt, I am not making the claim that no gods exist. I'm simply skeptical to the claim that any do. In the absence of any verifiable gods in our day-to-day life, non-belief in gods is the default position. Thus, in order to demonstrate this point of yours, you'll have to demonstrate that I do believe in a god. It's not my job to demonstrate that I don't, because that's the default position. The burden of proof is on you. And because you can't prove what I do or don't believe, your point immediately crumbles to dust. And any questions about why I do or don't believe are totally irrelevant to the question of whether or not I don't believe. But of course that's where you go straight to why. It's a different question, G-Man, it's a non sequitur, and it demonstrates your idiocy. And not just that, your dishonesty too. And shockingly, I say this during the debate, and what do? You lie immediately about what I had just said. someone can be an atheist even if they haven't looked at the evidence. If someone doesn't believe in God, it doesn't matter that they haven't looked at the evidence. That's irrelevant to the argument of whether someone's an atheist. Also, you have to demonstrate...
You can be an ignorant atheist? Are you suggesting that there are atheists out there that are ignorant and they are justified for being atheists?
Ooh, did you see what he did there? I made the point that someone can be an atheist regardless of the reasons for being one. He then conflates that with a statement of demographics, I guess, that some proportion of atheists are ignorant, which I'm prepared to concede, at least to a small degree. But before I get the chance to make that somewhat nuanced point, he tacks on his own bullshit argument and then immediately pretends it's exactly what I said. That's a lie. I'm not suggesting that. That's a straw man. You are a liar.
My channel.
You're a liar.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Let me just open my big old book of logical fallacies here. S. There we go, straw man. Oh, look, that was the example given. G-man, you're famous. You're also a dribbling retard. Oh, and did I mention? A pathological charlatan. You've crawled into a damp little hole that constitutes your niche in debate style. Within this hole is to be found not a trace of civility or honesty, because you're less interested in the truth, more in appearing to be right. With no one is that more obvious than with you, by a grand canyon of a margin. It is in fact your defining characteristic, not something to be proud of. And you know what? It gets worse, because near the beginning of the debate, he, through silence, tacitly admits that I'm right on this point. The reason for being an atheist and the fact that someone is an atheist can be separate. So, if someone could be an atheist without having any reason, just arbitrarily, it's possible, isn't it? So someone could possibly be an atheist. They say silence is golden, but man, gold ain't worth nothing compared to that. Gee man, you did more good in those 3 seconds of silence than you've ever done by talking. But it gets even better. I didn't notice this during the debate, but looking at it again, he's nodding his head as I'm saying this. So if someone could be an atheist without having any reason, he even winces. He knows he's wrong. And in case you're wondering, no, he doesn't go on to actually answer the question. He goes on to just completely evade it. So, So fucking anyway, you guys. Best refutation ever. Am I right or am I G-man? And what this so anyway leads on to is the next point of his I'm gonna cover. So let's see if whatever bullshit you've trawled up for your next point redeems you in any way. Intelligent design, also known as the teleological argument, or crazy, cultish, childish, nonsense, bullshit, wish-thinking, magical science, is very easy to refute. There's 2 ways to do this. Either you deconstruct the hypothesis being presented, or you present an alternative hypothesis, and demonstrate that it's better. The second method is the one usually used because it's very easy to just say evolution. Then you enter into the very interesting but often repetitive conversation about why evolution is true, and there's plenty of good ways to argue for this. However, during this debate, I decided to go for the first option of simply deconstructing the hypothesis, for 2 reasons. Firstly, because it's not done as often, and I thought it might be more interesting, and secondly, because I thought it was inevitable that we'd get onto evolution, and there were plenty of problems with what he'd already presented. Now, the fuck-up that I commonly see with the teleological argument, that predictably G-Man also exhibited, is simply asserting this looks intelligently designed, without ever making a connection to any god, especially his. That connection would be the evidence I was after. Now, if G-Man was smart enough to actually go the one step further that you can go with this from the theistic side, which is to say, God is the only thing that can produce order, then it would have got much more interesting. I could have performed a magic trick. No, really. I could have made him commit a specific logical fallacy. But even without performing this trick, his argument would have been easy to refute anyway. But since he didn't go that way, I'll save that magic trick for another time. So let's talk about what he did actually say.
The argument for intelligent design, is that when we look at this phone, we know an intelligence made it.
Well, no disagreement so far. Yes, phones are made by people. Problem is, that's not relevant in the slightest to the question of whether humans are intelligently designed by a god. So why are you even bringing it up?
When you were born, you were intelligently made because your mom and dad had sex.
Ooh, no, you sneaky fucker. Sexual intercourse doesn't involve a process of design, unless we're talking some very kinky architects. Now, it's true that the genetic mixing happens within the body of an intelligent being, but the design process, if you can even call it that, is not intelligent. And unsurprisingly, this is still completely irrelevant to the question of whether God had any hand in creating anything. It doesn't even approach God. So far, the only thing you've argued for, accepting your misnomer that humans are the result of intelligent design via sexual intercourse, is that phones and people are the results of intelligences doing things. Radical fucking notion there, G-Man. Still nowhere near approaching any god. And because the hypothesis you presented is so different from what is usually meant by intelligent design, let's call it something else. You know, just so that we don't accidentally commit the ambiguity fallacy. Right, G-Man? I'm gonna call your hypothesis intelligent fabrication, because all it states is that intelligences can make things, including other intelligences, though in that case only through a specific process.
And you were intelligently made, you cannot prove that you were not intelligently made.
I'm evolutionarily made. Prove I'm not. Haha! The fallacy game. Fun for the whole family. Warning, not recommended for those with honesty, integrity, or a shred of common sense.
In fact, most, if not all, of what we look at every single day is evidence that intelligent design is true.
You hear that, folks? Just look around you. The worst possible argument for anything. What if I were to say that the universe was the result of Bubbles the Fart Fairy shitting it out? Everything you look at confirms the theory, because everything you look at is what the theory expects you should see. Even that would be a stronger claim than what you've done. All you've done is let it be implied that God was involved. Even when I pressed you to make that claim, to somehow link God to what you were saying, you didn't. You did do something that you wanted me to think was that, which was a very disingenuous morphing of two different arguments. And that's the next point of yours I'm going to cover. So G-Man, I'm sorry to say, but if you're going to accept intelligent design, then it proves Bubbles the Fart Fairy. You'll have to change religions now.
That's really all the evidence I got to show you.
He said evidence. He called that evidence. Oh my god, G-Man. Okay, so it should be pretty obvious, but let me spell out what G-Man's trying to do here. Here's an example, okay? So I define evolution as cheese. Literally, cheese, the food. Now, G-Man, do you believe in evolution? Oh, you do believe in it by that definition. Great! Now you believe in evolution. You believe that humans ultimately evolved from single-celled organisms. You've rejected intelligent design. I'm proud of you, G-Man. You can join the ranks of biology now. All thanks to everyone's favourite culinary item, cheese.
That's it, cheese. We'll go somewhere where there's cheese.
So yeah, G-Man simply redefines intelligent design as what I'm calling intelligent fabrication, which, like cheese, is something that everyone can affirm, and then lets it be implied that God is involved. He's doing about 10% of the work you'd need to do to even complete a full claim that suggests God. This is why I was asking for more from him. He had done so little. And this is a more general criticism of his points, which applies to, I think, all of them. They're deliberately unclear, they're deliberately ambiguous, to allow him to move around at will without being tied down to any particular claims. Gotta love them portable goalposts.
What your job is to do now is to tell me why that's not a good reason to believe that there is a supernatural intelligence
that I can
do. Create everything.
Well said, past me. Yes, that I can do, and shall now very quickly. It'll be the same argument I made live, just presented a bit better. Okay, so if I say that 1 + 1 = 2, and we agree on that, that's the first premise of my argument, and then the conclusion of my argument is that evolution is true. Does that work for you? No, it's a non sequitur, which is exactly what you're doing. Your first premise is that phones look intelligently designed, and that people are formed by a process that's undertaken by intelligences. Your conclusion is God exists. It's a non sequitur. Your one premise does not lead to your conclusion in any sense. But I suppose more the fool me for expecting anything resembling sense to emerge from you. It's like you're trying to use the teleological argument before you've even understood it, and it's so simple, G-Man. Your performance was so pitiful, I'm going to do you a favour. I'm going to make the argument for you. Then my pity will expire, and I'll do what I would naturally do. Destroy the bad logic. Now, since you don't know what a syllogism is, so do you know what a syllogism is? Can you put your argument into a syllogism, so it actually makes sense?
No, I'm not going to do that.
You don't know what a syllogism is, do you?
What I'm going to do is...
You don't know what a syllogism is, do you? Since you clearly don't know what a syllogism is, you might want to take the time to look it up, just so that you can comprehend this without feeling totally humiliated. Syllogisms are a way of representing an argument, which consist of one or more premises ending with a conclusion derived from those premises. Here's a simple one for the teleological argument. Premise 1, complexity requires design. Premise 2, nature is complex. Conclusion, therefore, nature was designed. Now this argument doesn't even necessarily get you as far as deism, but it would conflict with evolution. However, the problems with it should be immediately apparent. The first premise is the weakest. What you could put is that complexity implies design, which would inevitably change the conclusion and make the entire argument significantly weaker. But even this is a bit of a stretch. Design is just one of the ways we know of that complexity can arise. And I'm not even talking about evolution. I can debunk this without even mentioning it. Snowflakes, sand dunes, stalagmites, stalactites, tornadoes, even waves in the ocean. There's so many things which are complex and ordered, even functional, that were not designed intelligently. Unless you want to suggest that God carves every snowflake. But that would mean that everything that's ordered in nature cannot be explained through science. And you gotta know that's not true. But either way, that's an assumption that's going to be knocked out by Occam's razor. So this argument's already well and truly killed to death, and I haven't had to use evolution for any of that. And despite your hilarious characterizations of it during our debate, I am well capable of defending evolution. If you respond to this, perhaps you'd like to give your best arguments against it. And before you accuse me of trying to shift the burden of proof, which you were doing pretty rapidly during the debate, my argument for evolution is the entirety of evolution as it appears in modern mainstream science. So go ahead and disprove every single fossil, every single rock layer date, every single piece of genetic evidence, that'll take you a while, and even all the somewhat weaker forms of evidence, like morphology and embryology. Oh, and have fun with those nested hierarchies of traits too. And once you've discredited all of that evidence, then we're simply back to one claim versus another claim, as you have no evidence. No, stop, it was a claim, G-Man, and it wasn't even a complete one at that. It's generous to even call it a claim. But to your great credit, you did manage to make one full argument, which would suggest a god if true, during this entire debate. Well, no, actually, you didn't make it, I had to make it for you, and then handily destroyed it, and I'm still convinced you don't understand how I destroyed it. But I shouldn't get ahead of myself, I haven't even shown you the title of this point yet. Suffice to say, it's a fucking good one. As I mentioned earlier, G-Man does a strange thing with this one. He integrates the cosmological and teleological arguments together in such a clumsy and incoherent way that it's difficult to even make these two separate sections. He presents them as if they're a single argument, but without any sort of logical connection between the two. Actually, the way I'd characterize it is that as soon as the teleological argument isn't working for him, he just switches to cosmological, pretends they're the same argument so he doesn't have to admit that the teleological argument has failed. He's just artificially given himself two separate lines of defense for one goal, whereas what he actually has is two goals with one line of defense for each of them. It's a blatant and really, once you see it, pitiful tactic through which it's easier for him to appear right more often. But the most damning thing about all this, I've just made him sound like a Machiavellian schemer, whereas I'm pretty sure what he says and does in debate is just the result of his natural dishonesty, his willingness to lie. That's right folks, we can't even ascribe any intelligence to his shitty tactics, let alone to his rare attempts to actually prove a point using logic, which, as you're about to see, fail tremendously. Now I'm going to play you a clip to illustrate G-Man's point here, but as I said before, it's a mess, so I'm going to have to try and talk you through it. How does any of what you just said go anywhere near demonstrating a god? So what you said is that phones are designed by people, we agree with that, and that people ultimately derive from people having sex, right? So how does any of that indicate a god?
And intelligence, because now this is when we get to the precept. The further you go back to God.
Right. Well, firstly, I could go into presupposition, including the fact that I don't think you actually know what it means, even though that is what you're doing here. But that's a minor point, so I'll stay off it for now. If I'm generous and ignore the fact that you asserted God as a necessary conclusion rather than just a possible conclusion, I would say that what you're doing here is proposing a hypothesis, that being God, to explain what you perceive as a problem. That problem being the lack of an explanation for complexity in nature. That is a claim, as I mentioned earlier. Where you've inserted God, you could just as easily insert anything else that has some similar attributes to your God. And that's even assuming we don't have a better explanation for how this happened. And that there are no other problems with your logic. So to try and decode and reify the argument you're making here, you say that if you work it all the way back, you get to God. Now we can interpret that to be effectively the prime mover argument, whereby everything has to have a cause, so what's the first cause? That is, and no, there's no dispute here, the cosmological argument. It is a different argument from the teleological argument. The teleological argument argues from the appearance of design. The cosmological argument argues about the quandary of existence, including causality. And now, in the interest of fairness, I'm going to play what you said after that, respond to it, and then we're going to get on to when I actually put your argument into a syllogism, which turns out to be basically what I've just said.
Now, you might try to argue the God of the gaps, but it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way.
It is a God of the gaps argument, but I wasn't going to go there with it. I didn't need to. Oh, and just saying it doesn't work that way does not make it not work that way, even if you say it twice.
And I can't wait till you try it, but...
Apparently he really couldn't wait, because he immediately moved on to the next thing before even giving me a chance to respond. What a shocker.
The further you go back, eventually you go back to the singularity.
Oh, the singularity? You mean the point at which artificial intelligence begins to grow exponentially? No. Perhaps you mean the quantum singularity, which is one suggested idea about how the universe started, which, and I'm not an expert, I believe has been at least partially substantiated, if not fully. That's what the work at the Large Hadron Collider is for, among other things.
Okay? And when you go back to that singularity that supposedly started everything, that supposedly expanded all this time, I can show you how that's a scientific impossibility.
No, you can't. But just before we go on, do you mind if I indulge myself quickly?
Singularity, 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 singularity.
The eyes just make it. Singularity. Is it ebonics or brain damage? Discuss in the comments section.
But I can also show you why an intelligence could be behind it.
Oh, could be behind it. So you're an agnostic theist? No? Oh, just dishonest then.
And my intelligence argument is going to hold more weight than your bang is.
Oh yes, I'm sure. One obviously illogical and frankly childlike claim from the mind of an adult child versus all of modern physics. Yeah, you've got a pretty good chance there, G-Man. Best of luck to you. Sure, okay, I wrote an article on this, so this will be interesting. Cosmological argument, let's go. So finally, the most important person in the room gets a chance to talk. Let's see what he says, shall we? Is your argument as follows: everything that exists requires a cause, the universe exists, therefore the universe was caused. This syllogism is the basic form of the cosmological argument. There are other forms, but I'm pretty sure G-Man doesn't know about them. Don't worry, they're all ineffective. I presented this in good faith. I was really trying to understand his argument, and he seemed to agree with me.
Yeah, let's say that, yes.
Okay, well, we'll start with that. Again demonstrating his determination to make his arguments as vague as possible. G-Man chooses to agree with this argument partially because he knows this is actually what he's saying, but refuses to agree with it fully, saying, let's go with that for now, because he senses that I am going to destroy it. Well folks, he was right. This is probably one of the best examples of a refuted theist argument. I would go so far as to say it's famously refuted. So easy is it in fact to refute, that I did just fine during the live show, so why not just play that for you? You're either going to have to do special pleading or infinite regress. So let me explain how this works. It's very simple. It's so simple in fact that G-Man couldn't get it. The first premise is everything that exists must be caused. Now, it says everything. That includes the universe and it includes God, if indeed God exists. Now, you could use another criteria to determine what you're specifying, which is what the Kalam cosmological argument does, but G-Man didn't do that, so I addressed the point he did make. Now, because God is included in this logic, that is, everything that exists must be caused, the argument is actually arguing that God must be caused. That would result in a causing entity for God. That entity would then also be captured by the logic of the argument, so that entity would also require a cause, and so on ad infinitum, hence infinite regress. The only way that you can attempt to escape this is by exempting God from the argument's logic. There's two ways to try to do this. You can either change the argument's logic, which would be a different argument, or you can just arbitrarily exempt God. That's what G-Man does, and that is the perfect example of special pleading, which is a logical fallacy. Okay. By that logic, God requires a cause.
No, he doesn't.
That's special pleading. That's a logical fallacy.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Because again,
but it is though.
We go by the time out. Because we go by the claim, and the claim says that God is infinite and God is self-existing. So if we go by this, as long as I stick to this, I don't regress. I don't do anything. I'm sticking to the claim. If you try to say that, if you try to make the argument that you're making, you're getting away from the claim, and you're talking about somebody I don't even know.
What G-Man's saying here is that his argument doesn't apply to God, despite the fact that it applies to everything explicitly. The reason he gives for it not applying to God is because God is defined as not being caused. This is textbook special pleading. If you don't want God to be included in your logic, then don't make everything that exists the target of your logic. Now, it's all well and good to accurately point out that this is special pleading. Seriously, G-Man, just go look it up. But there's more than that I can do, as is usually the case with logical fallacies. They're usually shortcuts to doing the extra work of demonstrating why they are problems in the first place. So here it is, even if I allow your argument that God is not included in this, all I have to do is say natural existence is self-existing as well. Now it's still special pleading, but it's only equal to what you're doing. I think even you can agree with that. You'll notice I didn't say that the universe is self-existing. Although that might actually be true, it's quite easy to create doubt in that position, because of the Big Bang. No, not even slightly. Your argument, which I vocalized and you agreed to, was that everything that exists must be caused, and you argue that God exists, therefore he must be caused.
Right. Wait, so stop there a minute. Everything was caused. Show me something that wasn't caused.
Oh, so everything was caused, including God, right? No, because special pleading. I've made this point enough. If I seem to be repeating myself a lot, it's only because G-Man is consistently wrong. So, show you something that wasn't caused. Interesting that you're asking me to do this when you're the one claiming that there is actually something that wasn't caused, that being God. Can you show me God? I didn't think so. However, I can show you things that weren't caused, or at least not in the way we understand causality. This is an excerpt from the Institute of Physics at iop.org, link in the description. Quote, radioactive decay is determined by quantum mechanics, which is inherently probabilistic. So it's impossible to work out when any particular atom will decay, but we can make predictions based on the statistical behavior of large numbers of atoms. End quote. On the quantum level, the universe is not deterministic, but is in fact probabilistic. This means that causality is not working the same way that we understand it to work on levels above the quantum. This is why virtual particles can appear without cause. So you see, G-Man, science has done your work for you in providing a way for something to happen without a cause. Simply go very, very, very small. Yes, even smaller than your IQ. You said that everything that exists is caused, and God exists.
You said that.
Yeah, you agreed. You agreed.
I agreed.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
I said, yeah, let's go with that. That's what I said. I said, yeah, let's go with that.
Oh look, what a surprise. He did exactly what I said he was going to do. He relied on the fact that he had only sort of agreed with my vocalization of what his argument actually was to evade it when I destroyed it. If you watch the entire debate, look out for me. See if you can find an argument that he makes that's clear, well-defined, and unambiguous. Even if it's obviously wrong. Let me know in the comments, because I can't think of one. He's a slippery fucker. Are you dropping the argument that I vocalized for you, that everything that exists must be caused?
No, I'm not. No.
So you see, folks, at the same time, he's not adhering to the argument when I'm destroying it, but he's also not dropping it. He's somehow taking the literally impossible middle ground. That is how slippery this fucker is.
My argument is intelligent design for my reason to believe that God exists.
And as if we needed any more evidence of his slipperiness, he's now cut away from the cosmological right back to the teleological. We've gone around in a big circle, I've destroyed him on every little point, but he hasn't admitted it a single time. He is well practiced in tactical dishonesty, with the aim of making himself appear right, even when everything shows that he's wrong.
What you can do is say that nothing, and this is funny, because I like to know what the definition of nothing is. Like, if nothing's there, I mean nothing, like no matter, no energy, and nothing.
This is from later in the debate, and G-Man has arbitrarily moved on to nihilo ex nihilo, another form of the cosmological argument. This point in the debate is a great example of G-Man's incivility and dishonesty. He persistently interrupts me giving him the response to this question, and then, I suppose when he realizes I can respond to it, he just arbitrarily moves on to the next thing. It's like he knows he's wrong or something. The argument is that nothing cannot cause anything, therefore there must have been something else to cause whatever we observe to be the first effect. It's basically just a rewording of the standard cosmological argument that I presented for him earlier. The flaw with it that I tend to go for first when I hear this argument is that it makes the assumption that there was a time or state of existence in which nothing existed. And since that state of existence, in which absolute nothingness does actually exist and is the only thing that exists, is a requisite for his argument, I ask him to demonstrate that it has ever existed. I'll play you the rest of the clip because we don't go any further than that. I expressed this point many times and he ignores it and interrupts it and speaks over it. I'll just be playing it to give you a glimpse into the character of G-Man. He knew he couldn't respond to what I was saying, so he just decided to try to suppress what I was saying. G-Man, can you prove that nothing has ever existed?
Whoa, I want you to listen to yourself a minute. How does 0 create something?
Yeah, I've heard the argument.
I'm trying to fathom
heard
it.
the argument.
How does zero? Wait. Tell me.
I know what you're saying. Just let me respond to it.
How does zero create energy? How does zero?
Let me actually
create
respond
matter?
to your argument, man.
Better yet, I got a better question for you.
No. We're going to stick to that one, okay? So, can you prove that absolute nothing has ever existed?
Hold on a minute.
You have to prove that nothing has ever existed.
Create gold. That's what I want to know. How does
Stop
zero
evading
create gold?
my response. You have to prove. I didn't say it was. You have to prove that nothing has ever existed. Stop interrupting me. Let me make my response. You have to prove that nothing has existed.
The original argument. Time out.
Jesus fuck, man.
The original argument was to prove that you was not an atheist.
Yeah, real subtle subject change there, G-Man. No one noticed. And in case you're wondering, no, he didn't return to this subject, he just immediately skipped off to something else.
Because I want to make it clear that we start arguing about how the universe started and whatnot.
Nothing you say is
that's
clear.
Going to be the argument. Wait a minute, that's going to be the argument. It's no longer about why you're not an atheist.
Yeah, no shit, so why do you bring it up? Your argument for why I'm not an atheist was the teleological argument. Your argument for why that was true was the cosmological argument. So you've literally just announced that your chain of reasoning is unlinked. So in one short sentence, you've unpicked your entire debate. And then following this, you have the audacity to say...
And you need to concede to defeat.
Wow. He might as well have said, I've done nothing of any use during this debate, therefore I win. But that's what we expect from G-Man, right? I mean, he didn't even try to set up this I've won thing that he did. In fact, he did exactly the opposite. He set up my victory and then claimed it himself. What a moron. It's just one of the many tactics that defines him. And this is without exploring his constant mischaracterization of me. Basically live slander, which he slips in along with obviously wrong points and then says something else immediately before giving me a chance to respond to them. That's textbook Gish Gallop. It's G-Man's primary tactic and the only way he's ever appeared right for even a moment. He's not the first person I've debated who uses these kinds of tactics. Trust me, you wouldn't want to be like the others.
So are you saying that black people don't commit more crime in the United States?
You are such a fucking liar. You are
what are you saying? What are you fucking saying, dude? What point are you trying to make?
You are using statistics wrongly, not that your statistics are wrong. How is that so difficult?
Okay, so let's even say that that's true. So what?
So what do you mean so
the result is
your conclusion is going to be wrong.
Oh, so the conclusion is wrong that black people don't commit more crime in the US
You're
than
such a fucking liar. You keep conflating the two.
He really was such a fucking liar. And G-Man's not much better. Actually, G-Man might be worse. Jesus fuck, that's not an endorsement. G-Man, you might be a bigger liar than someone who I accurately refer to as Goebbels. Man, what would that make you? Oh, I've got it. You're Kim Jong-un. Yes, G-Man. That is who you are. Okay, let's have a rummage around the bottom of the barrel here, see what we can find. Oh look, it's yet more G-Man. Okay, what's this? The world's fastest flip-flop. No, it's not Hillary Clinton. It's worse.
Oh, and by the way, for those who were watching, before I came here, I asked Tom what we was going to be debating about, and Tom didn't even want to tell me.
That's a lie as well. How is that? How can you constantly lie like this?
Finish, Tom. Let me finish, Tom.
You're lying again.
Well, we came on air. He said he wanted to talk about presupposition.
Hold on, run that by me again.
Before I came here, I asked Tom what we was going to be debating about, and Tom didn't even want to tell me. He said he wanted to talk about presupposition.
I asked him what we'd be debating about, and he didn't tell me. But he did tell me, and it was presupposition. Good job, G-Man. You've demonstrated that you're a liar. As if that needed demonstrating. Okay, you've changed your argument. You've literally, in the space of 5 seconds, have changed your claim. His propensity for dishonesty is still amazing me right now. In case you were wondering, the second edition of his claim was actually true. I did want to talk about presuppositional apologetics. We discussed it before the show, and he said he didn't want to discuss it. So we didn't. Speaking of which, let's see what's next in the barrel. What's this one? The missing Levian Satanists. Well, that sounds interesting.
You know that there are atheists that are Levian Satanists that claim to be a god.
I didn't notice this during the debate, but I think he said that the Levian Satanists are atheists. You would have to have a very biased interpretation for this to be true. But of course that's what we can expect from G-Man.
Do Levian Satanists exist? Yes or no?
Now, you probably wouldn't have expected this topic to be much of a sticking point, would you? But this is G-Man we're talking about, and he'll do anything to make himself appear right. And in this case, that meant employing maximum pedanticism. Now remember, G-Man plays the definition bait-and-switch game, and so I had to be specific, especially when he wasn't being. Therefore, I asked for his definition of a Levian Satanist. Define a Levian Satanist for me.
A LaVeyan Satanist is someone who is someone who follows the teachings of Anton LaVey. Now,
by that definition, yes, some people do exist.
Definitions and hold to the teachings of the Satanic Bible.
I'm sure both you and G-Man heard me affirm the existence of LaVeyan Satanists by the definition he just gave. But maybe he didn't, and maybe what he did next wasn't dishonesty. But this is G-Man.
Do LaVeyan Satanists exist, yes or no? We'll know if you're a liar or not right now.
By the definition you just gave, I think they do, although I haven't met any. Now, I think that's a pretty reasonable answer. It's true I haven't met any. I don't really have any experience with them. Why would I care? They're just another cult, like Christianity. But I have heard of them. I have heard of them spoken of as if they currently exist, and the fact that G-Man's bringing them up and asking if I believe they exist leads me to believe they probably do. And so I said I think they do. I wasn't going to affirm it with certainty, because I wasn't certain. My vagueness in this case was due only to honesty. Turns out, G-Man doesn't like it when someone else is as vague as he likes to be, even when that person is being vague for honest reasons.
You think they do?
I haven't met any, as I say. They probably do.
This is not even a serious conversation. You're like a giant troll.
Just to put this in perspective, this is G-Man calling someone else a troll.
So you're telling me that LaVeyan Satanists
I think
don't
actually
exist.
you're right. Did you catch that, perchance? I said I think they do exist. He then told me that I think they don't exist. How could that be any more dishonest? Another textbook straw man. That was a straw man.
No. You said you think that LaVeyan Satanists exist.
Oh, so you were listening. So G-Man, does that mean you disagree with this guy?
You just said that you don't believe that LaVeyan Satanists
No, I didn't.
exist.
Hey G-Man, you're a liar. And let me be clear, I'm not stating that as a momentary thing. I'm not saying that you have lied. I'm saying that your character is that of a liar. A liar is something that you are. When you're at your worst, and when you're at your best, you are a liar. That is your person. You are a liar in exactly the same way as you are black. And if you have watched this, and you disagree with my assessment of you, then you're now lying to yourself, which I'm sure is not new. I presented incontrovertible evidence. If this was a court of law, and I was tasked with proving that you're a liar, I could have rested my case ages ago, and it would have been a foregone conclusion that you would be convicted. Sort yourself the fuck out, you pathetic excuse for an intellectual. Theists thoroughly lost the great war of ideas to atheism, the very obvious victor. And you're simply the last vestiges of that drowned populace, clinging on with your claws of dishonesty and incivility. Your shitty tactics are all you've got. They are, in fact, all you are. You'll never be more to us than a straggler we have mercy for. You're already a laughingstock, and for good reason. You already know this. You're in denial. It's embarrassing. You think God's gonna help you? Well, he would have to exist first. Get over it. Not even you need imaginary friends. Grow up. Grow up. Thank you so very much for watching. Do hope you come again. There's even more stuff at oozaloo.net. And if you really enjoy what I do, you could consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/oozaloo. Because that's the default position. The burden of proof is on you. And because you can't prove what I do or don't believe, your point immediately crumbles to dust. And any questions about why I do or don't believe are totally irrelevant to the question of whether or not I don't believe. But of course that's where you go straight to why. It's a different question, G-Man, it's a non sequitur. And it demonstrates your idiocy. And not just that, your dishonesty too. And shockingly, I say this during the debate, and what do? You lie immediately about what I had just said. Someone can be an atheist even if they haven't looked at the evidence. If someone doesn't believe in God, it doesn't matter that they haven't looked at the evidence. That's irrelevant to the argument of whether someone's an atheist. Also, you have to demonstrate...
You could be an ignorant atheist? Are you suggesting that there are atheists out there that are ignorant and they are justified for being atheists?
Ooh, did you see what he did there? I made the point that someone can be an atheist regardless of the reasons for being one. He then conflates that with a statement about babysitting a man twice my age. More on that later. First, let's ask G-Man his opinion on what he was doing. Are you deliberately wasting time, or is this what you do naturally?
No, this ain't what I do naturally.
Okay, so you're
what I would
deliberately
like for
wasting
you to
time.
do-
There you have it, folks. What more do I need to say? And really, that's the important point here. Nothing need be added to the debate for an intelligent and objective person to recognize that G-Man is an infantile liar whose only tactic in debate is to suppress his opponent and push his own delusional narrative. Bereft entirely, as he is, of intelligent reasoning or evidence, he adopts the mantra, "If I can't have it, neither can anyone else," and all of his toys end up on the floor. But wait, there's more. Give him half a second and he'll lie to you about you, despite you clearly spelling out your position not moments before. And then when you rightly accuse him of the strawman fallacy, he'll deny that too. Because remember folks, honesty is a rare thing, and simply put,
It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
and of course by it, I mean... Gish Gallop, you're literally moving on to another question before you give me a chance to respond. And now you're going to interrupt me again. That was the cosmological argument, G-Man. There's a lot to go over there before I'm interrupted in a few seconds.
So
Oh, there it is.
And Axe doesn't have a very very beginning of Axe.
That's a lie as well. How is that? How can you constantly lie like this?
Time out.
Jesus
The
fuck,
original
man. Yeah, so as I'm sure you can see, my time spent with G-Man was analogous to time one might spend trying to teach a 5-year-old child the finer points of quantum mechanics while they're having a tantrum. Fun, right? Wrong! This was supposed to be a debate. No one said anything predictably cut off at the end there. What I was going to say was a video series each responding to each other's points. It seems like a more fair venue. Each one of us gets to choose what we say, gets to make our points honestly, and without being interrupted. So guess what I'm gonna do now? So, G-Man, do atheists exist?
No.
That's interesting. Very interesting. Unfortunately for G-Man, however, it's also very impossible to demonstrate, unless you can present to me a verifiable mind reader. Because guess where the burden of proof is, G-Man? That's right, on you. For the permanent avoidance of doubt, I am not making the claim that no gods exist. I'm simply skeptical to the claim that any do. In the absence of any verifiable gods in our day-to-day life, non-belief in gods is the default position. Thus, in order to demonstrate this point of yours, you'll have to demonstrate that I do believe in a god. It's not my job to demonstrate that I don't. Pointing out that someone's lying when they are isn't useful unless they have some sort of value for honesty, some sort of honor, some sort of integrity. But G-Man, he's the product of a sort of artificial selection, whereby any theist who attempts to argue with any integrity is going to be shown very quickly to be wrong. That's what G-Man's afraid of. And that was my mistake. I came into this in good faith. I treated him with the assumption, as I do with anyone, that he's capable of being civil and honest. But I think I was wrong. I don't think he can debate like that. He'd lose immediately. To those of you saying I should have known better, well, I wasn't expecting much, but he was a lot worse this time than I've ever seen him before. And I have had debates with theists who have been genuinely pleasant, who I've had actual good conversations with. G-Man's just too much of a pussy, to be honest. So, let me repeat what I said towards the end of the debate. I am perfectly happy to explain all this to you, but you are not willing to let me. So let's do a video! So yeah, before I was